Hello, and welcome to this year's BNEWS Entertainment Summer Movie Buzz. I'm your host, John Viaes, and joining me is BNEWS Entertainment reporter Chris Flaherty.
Hey, John.
So, Chris, tell me a little bit about last year's summer blockbuster season.
It was not a good one, John. In fact, it was the worst one in over a decade, I think. Since 2006, there was only $3.8 billion sold in the domestic ticket box office, and that was a 14.6 drop compared to summer 2016, which, that's kind of amazing because we had a lot of heavy hitters last year, like Wonder Woman and the new Spider-Man and Guardians of the Galaxy 2. But in between all those, we also had a lot of critical and commercial duds, like Pirates of the Caribbean 5 and Baywatch, which together both made for the worst Memorial Day box office in over a decade. And then, Despicable Me 3, the critically acclaimed Emoji Movie, and did we have another Transformers movie last year? It's hard to keep count.
Yeah, because it's always the same thing with Transformers.
Yeah. What's interesting though is the reason, part of why these movies keep getting made, even though they're failing with audiences and critics here, they're making a lot of money over in China, which I learned on BuzzFeed, which is a legit source these days. So, obviously these movies are making a profit overseas, which is why the American film industry is still putting money into them.
Got to make that money somewhere.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. And also summer movie season has been very competitive in the past few years. You could say the market is very oversaturated with tentpole films and franchise films, to a point where releasing a film in the summer might not be the best decision marketing-wise. Summer movie season can now start as early as March or April. Batman vs. Superman came out Easter weekend that year.
I thought that was February.
February, March,
March.
Early in the year, because Easter fluctuates. Beauty and the Beast and Logan came out in March. Deadpool came out on Valentine's Day. Like I said, summer movie season starts earlier and earlier next year, which is probably a good segue into our first film of discussion this season, which is the big Avengers Infinity War, which originally was supposed to come out the first weekend in May, as most big Marvel movies do, but the studio decided to push it forward to April 27th. And you and I both saw this, so what did you think?
Oh, I loved it, and I thought pushing it back a couple weeks, I'm not sure what kind of decision that might have been, but I thought it would built up some more hype. Mm-hmm. Obviously, every comic book fan that rushed into that movie, everybody who's been following the Marvel Cinematic Universe since 2008 with Iron Man, we're all devastated from certain losses that we will not spoil.
Certain things that happened in that movie that we shouldn't talk about in case the 10 people out there who haven't seen it yet. Like you, I really love this movie. I saw it 3 times in theaters. I was in awe of the creative choices and the creative risks that movie took. This movie, it had as much of a chance to succeed as it did to fail, because it is the 19th film in the franchise, and it's the 3rd in the Avengers franchise. So, usually, with sequels, you go down in quality, but Marvel has done a very good job to, keep planning with every film. And so this has really been a huge, cinematic achievement, creatively, financially. It's over $2 billion in the worldwide box office, the 4th highest grossing film of all time right now. So yeah, I loved it. You loved it. For those that don't know, there is a part 2 coming out next May, Avengers 4, which we don't know what it's called yet. Because apparently it's the title is a spoiler to what happens in Infinity War. So we kind of have to think, you got to almost reverse engineer it. Think about what happened in Infinity War. I'm okay, what could be a spoiler?
And I'll say that this movie could have been a huge mess, but with what they did, with the number of superheroes they've had, and every single movie that's come out, they did an excellent job, balancing all the different settings, Guardians of the Galaxy, Captain America, Iron Man.
Yeah, it's a consistent tone all the way through. and through. Like, no characters are like out of character, for lack of a better word. Like, everybody gets their moment to shine.
You could tell Marvel took their time over the years, and they used their Disney money to their advantage.
Yes, their Disney money. Well, I guess I understand the Russo brothers consulted, like, you know, the other directors from the films, like, you know, Taika Waititi as far as Thor, and like James Gunn. I think James Gunn wrote a lot of dialogue of the Guardians for this movie, and then, you know, Ryan Coogler for the Black Panther. So there is very much like a large collaboration going on at Marvel Studios, and I think that has been a major reason why so many of these films have been successful, because everybody is on the same page. And, you know, Infinity War, what more can we say? We loved it.
Absolutely.
And it is
Who doesn't love Marvel?
the biggest film of the year so far, and possibly of the summer. So that was our first major release of this season.
And then moving on, we've got Deadpool 2, which came out on May 18th, 2018.
Mm-hmm. Now, you and I have conflicting thoughts on this movie.
I personally loved it.
See, I was very disappointed. I'm sorry. Like, the first Deadpool was such a pleasant surprise for me. I loved it. I thought it was so unique. It was creative. Deadpool 2 just sort of fell flat for me. It felt very hollow and by the numbers. I didn't, you know, believe the emotional stakes of the movie. I didn't believe the character choices some characters were making. I thought that again, avoiding spoilers, that inciting incident in the beginning of the film, you know what I'm talking about? I thought that was a very cheap move, and I thought it was just out of the blue, and it didn't hit home for me. Like, I was shocked at first, but I was like...
It happened a little too soon.
Too soon, yeah, and it just felt like a very typical, you know, thing to do with a character in that role for a sequel. You know what I mean?
I do.
Yeah. So, I mean, not to say that it's a bad film. Like, I did enjoy a lot of the jokes and pop culture references. I don't regret seeing it. It just felt very average for me.
That's fair.
And I still love the original. Now, obviously, I'm in the minority here because it's got an 82% on Rotten Tomatoes. It's doing quite well at the box office. And, you know, it's standing to possibly, you know, match the success of the original. The original was the second highest grossing film, R-rated film of all time, domestically, behind the Passion of the Christ, which is weird to put Passion of the Christ and Deadpool in the same category.
It's often an R-rated superhero film, especially these days, was very unheard of until Deadpool came around.
Very unheard, completely unheard of. It almost set a new standard. Like, that was the first major R-rated superhero movie, and then, you know, that was followed by Logan, which is a very different kind of R-rated film, but still equal in quality and deserving of the R rating. And yeah, like you said, Deadpool was released on Valentine's Day weekend in February 2016, because I don't think they saw it having much of a huge chance, like, financially at the box office. Like, they thought maybe, you know, out of like major summer season, it could do a lot better, and, you know, that proved to be a worthwhile gamble, because obviously Deadpool has become a major success. And I guess that was the inciting incident to throw the sequel into summer movie season.
Yeah, the Deadpool comic series has had quite the cult following over the years.
Yeah.
So it was no surprise to me that even in February, a lot of the dedicated fans and average moviegoers would flock to see it on Valentine's Day. Deadpool
has, people have rallied for a Deadpool film for years, even Ryan Reynolds himself, especially after the misfire of the Deadpool character in X-Men Origins Wolverine.
Mouth sewn shut.
Yep.
Mark with the mouth.
And speaking of franchise, I don't want to say disappointments, but, well, let's just talk about it. Solo, a Star Wars story. I'll start with this one. I was sort of expecting this film to be a failure, and sadly it is. Box office-wise, it is sort of becoming a failure. It is definitely struggling at the box office. In its second weekend, Deadpool 2 still took the #1 spot. Right now, it's 71% on Rotten Tomatoes. That is the lowest Rotten Tomato rating of the four recent Star Wars films, so being, you know, Force Awakens, Last Jedi, Rogue One, and lower than one of the prequels, so ouch.
Yeah.
But yeah, box office struggles. A lot of production troubles for this film. They fired the original directors, Phil Lord and Chris Miller, halfway through production, and then Ron Howard came out and I think he reshot 70% of the film. So, but after all that, I liked it.
I thought it was okay.
Yeah,
I thought it was fine. I didn't think it was as bad as everybody was making it out to be at the time of the release of the very first trailer.
No, I mean, the trailers did nothing for me, but I mean, I enjoyed it. It's just a harmless, fun, action film. It doesn't add much to the Star Wars lore. I mean, you're not gonna miss out on a lot if you don't see this film.
Yeah, because it's mostly a Han Solo origin story.
Yeah, I mean, and even so, we don't even really get into spoilers. It's not even so much an origin story for him, just sort of like a glimpse into his younger life. I think, if anything, it's a bigger origin story for those dice.
Yeah.
From Force Awakens and The Last Jedi.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't there a switch in directors for The Last Jedi as well?
No, Rian Johnson. See, Rian Johnson, he's probably the most successful Star Wars director of recent, because despite the fact The Last Jedi has received a lot of fan backlash, the studio has given him his own trilogy. They gave him his own trilogy to make even before The Last Jedi came out. So everyone sort of thought, like, The Last Jedi must be really, really good. And then afterwards, critics loved it, fans go back and forth about it. I really enjoy The Last Jedi, but that's just me. And many people sort of think that the reason Solo is failing at the box office is because fans are still iffy or burnt about The Last Jedi.
Yeah.
So
it definitely got some mixed reactions. Would you say that maybe if it came out, maybe if they brought it out during the holiday season, would it have been a little more successful? If they had more time to work on it.
That's an interesting question.
Because all the Star Wars movies up until Solo have been coming out during the holiday season as of 2015.
Well, specifically, so instead of Memorial Day weekend 2018, Christmas 2018, is that what you're saying?
Yes.
I think it probably might have struggled more. I know there is another Transformers movie coming out around Christmas, the Bumblebee movie, and then Aquaman is coming out around Christmas too. So I think it probably would have suffered even worse back then. They definitely would have had more time to creatively retool it, but financially, I'm not sure it would have done much better. And I can't help but think, it is a very average film.
Yes.
And me personally, I didn't see much merit in learning about the origins of Han Solo until they said Phil Lord and Chris Miller were going to direct this movie. Because I don't know how well you know Phil Lord and Chris Miller, but they're sort of like, they've become the directors famous for taking bad ideas and making them into good movies, like Jump Street and the Lego Movie. So I thought that their creative outlook on films I thought would have been really great. Not to say that Ron Howard didn't do good with what he had, but you just got to wonder what if at this point. So maybe the first misfire of the Star Wars franchise since Disney bought Lucasfilm. But we'll see, what this means for the franchise's future. I think we'll be fine. I think we'll keep making Star Wars films for many, many years.
Oh, absolutely. Moving on, we've got Ocean's 8, which came out this past Friday.
Yes, and I haven't seen it yet. Have you?
Neither have I.
No, the Ocean's 11, the Ocean series has never been I think, a major audience draw. I remember the not many people know this, but the original Ocean's 11 with George Clooney, Brad Pitt, and Matt Damon is a remake of an old film with Frank Sinatra, Dean Martin, Sammy Davis Jr. So it was like a starring vehicle for the Rat Pack back in the day, and I think that came out in the 50s. Now that movie is apparently a critical bomb. So, and the remake with Clooney was apparently very well received. It was well received by audiences, and 12 and 13 kind of got mixed reviews. As far as Ocean's 8, it's sort of falling, in between the median of all these films. But yeah, I don't really have much to say about Ocean's 8. I haven't seen it yet. Looks very good, getting a lot of good reviews, nice cast. Definitely a nice break between all the sci-fi and superhero movies that we've been barraged with the past few weeks.
Yes, we've gotten so many superhero films over the last few years. As great as they are, it's good to variety it up a little bit.
Yes, absolutely. But it's the new Western. Superhero movies are abundant for a while, and they will be for probably quite a few more years until the bubble pops, which is a story for another day.
And moving on, we have a film called Hotel Artemis, which came out on the exact same night as Ocean's 8.
And did not do as well.
A 59% rating on Rotten Tomatoes.
59% rating on Rotten Tomatoes. A very small box office. Over 4 million, not so much over 4 million right now. For those that don't know, Hotel Artemis is sort of like a high concept sci-fi film starring Jodie Foster and Sterling K. Brown. It's and Dave Bautista. It's like a hotel for like criminals and stuff, and then something goes down. I didn't put this one on the list, so I don't know too much about it. But yeah, it's a low budget like action concept film. This film might earn its budget back, but it's sort of getting buried in between all these other films. Directed by Drew Pearce, who wrote Iron Man 3, which is interesting. So I guess that writer to director leap didn't do so well.
Oh, what an escalation.
Yes.
So yeah, I don't have much to say about Hotel Artemis either. So I guess we can move on to Won't You Be My Neighbor, which is the indie film documentary about the one and only Mr. Rogers.
Yes, and this film, 99% on Rotten Tomatoes. So apparently a very, very good documentary. I've heard nothing but good things. Who doesn't like Mr. Rogers?
Very eager to see it.
Yes,
I've always loved Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood.
Not a huge hit at the box office, but it's had a very limited release, so that's not a huge surprise. It has gone, I think, completely around all the festivals. I know it was a big hit at Sundance. Mr. Rogers' widow was just on Jimmy Fallon this week, so it's definitely getting its publicity. I think Focus Features might have an awards contender on their hands, maybe?
Possible.
I mean, the documentary category for the Oscars is always a mixed bag. I think this could really stand out among the crowd. It has that nostalgic factor that I think audiences and critics really love. And I think this documentary is coming at a good time in, the political and cultural climate. Because Mr. Rogers was just all about, loving your neighbor and,
being a good person.
Yeah, so I think, this is going to really resonate with audiences and maybe have some good sticking power. Maybe it'll get a wider release and then, a couple of re-releases closer to Oscar season because, the Academy has a short-term memory problem as far as nominating movies.
I can see it being quite an emotional tearjerker, much like, have you ever seen I Am Big Bird, the Carol Spinney story?
I have not, no.
That's another great one that I recommend.
Yep. And for those people out there who are big on documentary films, there are 2 more coming out this summer that you might be interested in. Director Kevin MacDonald is also doing a documentary on Whitney Houston, and director Eugene Jarecki. Both of these directors are critically acclaimed, have had many successful documentaries over the past few years. Eugene Jarecki's The King will be out soon, which is about taking Elvis's Rolls Royce across country and just sort of seeing the path that Elvis took, on his way to fame. So if you're an Elvis fan, if you're a Whitney Houston fan, if you're a Mr. Rogers fan, if you're a documentary fan, there's a lot for you this summer.
I do love Elvis.
All right. And then just out today is a film I think you and I and many people our age have been waiting for many, many years.
Oh yes, Pixar's The Incredibles 2.
Probably the only Pixar sequel we have actually, as fans, have wanted.
Aside from Toy Story 2 and 3.
Yes, we're like, when are you gonna make Incredibles 2? Well, here's a prequel about how the monsters from Monsters Inc. went to college. We're like, all right, when's Incredibles 2? here's a sequel about Dory getting lost.
Which was actually a good movie.
I mean, I like Finding Dory. You know, it's fun, it's harmless. Monsters University is okay.
And then the movie about the vehicles.
I don't know what you're talking about.
It's best if you don't.
Yeah. But again, writer-director Brad Bird returns after a couple movie switching over to live action for a while. He did Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol, which was a nice, you know, adrenaline shot to the Mission Impossible franchise, I think, which we'll talk more about later.
Oh, yeah.
And then he did Disney's Tomorrowland, which was an interesting film.
I remember seeing that one. I thought that was fine for what it was. George Clooney.
Yeah, it was all right.
Yeah.
I mean, I love the concept, but it just sort of fell apart, you know.
Because when you hear Tomorrowland, you hear the area in the Magic Kingdom.
Yeah. And it's like it's a futuristic
That's what you
world and
think
stuff.
about, yeah.
Which it still kind of was, but like it had this underlying message about creativity and originality and stuff, and it just sort of fell flat in the writing and the post-production, I guess. But anyway, Brad Bird is back to what made him famous with The Incredibles.
He hasn't been in Pixar since Ratatouille, am I correct?
No, he's not been in Pixar since Ratatouille, and he didn't write Ratatouille, he just directed it, I believe. So this is his first Pixar film where he's written and directed. The original film had 97% of Rotten Tomatoes. This one's at 95 right now. You know, like we said, fan and critical anticipation is very high. Could make major bank as the first family film of the summer. So you can take the little ones to this one. You can't really take little kids to see Deadpool 2.
No.
And if you're thinking about taking your young ones to see Infinity War, you might want to hold off on that one.
Yeah, there is a crying child right in front of me my second time seeing that movie.
Oh my God. I was a crying child in Infinity
Looked like he was
War.
about 3-4 years old.
Yeah. Maybe just wait 10 minutes before taking your kid into Infinity War if you really want to take them. Or 15. I don't, but yeah, just fair warning right there.
But I saw The Incredibles 2 last night, actually, and
Oh, you did?
I was blown away. I loved it. It definitely lives up to its predecessor. It's got the same characters, all these original ideas. Because with Pixar, and with every movie they've made, like Toy Story, Monsters Inc., there's a whole universe to explore. And not to spoil anything, but with The Incredibles, they took advantage of that. Like in a similar way that they did with Toy Story 2 and 3 and Finding Dory.
And you almost got to think The Incredibles 2 is coming, you know, just at the right time because The Incredibles is a superhero movie. So it's sort of, you know, it's feeding off the audience's taste for superhero movies.
Exactly.
Their never-ending appetite for superhero movies. So I'll ask you this because you saw it. Do you think there is a possibility of a third Incredibles movie?
So I would think so, but I did read, this was about a week or two ago. So Brad Bird isn't big on sequels. For example, when there's the Iron Giant, which is another movie he worked on with Warner Brothers. Fans were begging, demanding for a sequel, and he said no. He said no. I just want to make one story, and I don't want to tamper with my original ideas. That wasn't his exact quote, but that's the vibe that I got.
Yeah.
Which I think is a smart move.
Sure. I mean, it took him almost 15 years to make a sequel to The Incredibles.
Yes.
It'll probably be 20 or 30 if we want a third Incredibles. But after this, is there really any more Pixar films that could have, or I guess they all could have sequels, but could have a justifiable sequel at this point?
I don't think it's necessary. I mean, we got Toy Story 4 next year.
That's true.
I can see Inside Out having a sequel. Have Riley
That could
growing up
work.
with the emotions the same way Andy grew up with Woody and Buzz.
Don't do an Up 2 or a Wall-E 2.
Please no. I love those movies.
I'm probably like the only person out there who wants a Bug's Life 2.
They did hint that in the Toy Story 2 outtakes.
You know, we're gonna get sidetracked. Let's just keep moving.
Yeah.
Now we've passed on to, you know, what's already in theaters. Now we're into the coming soon to a theater near you stage of our program. And so next week we have Jurassic World: Fallen Kingdom. Now we've both seen the original Jurassic World, right?
Yes.
Yeah. What did you think of it?
I thought it was fine. You know, I wasn't expecting. I mean, I'm glad it wasn't an exact like shot-for-shot remake of the original Jurassic Park. I liked that it was a follow-up. What happened years later And you know, who doesn't love Chris Pratt?
Yes, of course. Chris Pratt has become one of the biggest stars in Hollywood right now. I'm going to throw my cards on the table. I have never seen Jurassic Park 2 and 3. It's been a while since I've seen the original Jurassic Park. But I thought it was just, a fun, action film, nothing very groundbreaking or revolutionary about it. I sort of think, time and technology has evolved to a point where I think a dinosaur epidemic movie isn't as resonant with audiences as it used to be. I'm completely wrong, I guess, in that, because Jurassic World became the third highest grossing film of all time. Might get usurped in a few weeks by Infinity War, but we'll see. I think the original film is about, the original Jurassic World film is at like 95 on Rotten Tomatoes, which is amazing because sort of like we were talking about The Last Jedi, the critics really loved it, but fans not so much. It's definitely got its haters out there, which I don't understand. I mean, it's the dinosaur film. Like, what more do you want?
You either love it or hate it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't get it, but reviews have been mixed for the second one. I'm still looking forward to seeing it. My big gripe is apparently the plot is so there's a volcano, and so they have to evacuate the dinosaurs, but then this big corporation comes in, and now they want to make new dinosaurs and weaponize them. I think that's the plot of at least half the movie. And then I just think, that's what you tried to do in the last one, and that clearly didn't work out for you, so why are you trying it again? So
I think they're very confident in their second chance. We'll see what happens.
we'll see. And then we celebrate America with the first Purge movie on July 4th. It's the fourth Purge movie, but it's called The First Purge.
That's going to confuse some average moviegoers
Yes,
who might not be too familiar with the franchise as a whole.
Let's just say the fourth Purge movie.
Yeah.
Which is called The First Purge. It's a prequel about how the Purge came to be. For those that don't know what the Purge movies are about, it's sort of set in a not too distant future where the new founding fathers of America have instilled this one night a year where all crime is legal, and it's sort of like a psychological like exercise that like if everyone gets like 24 hours to do whatever they want without any consequences, they won't break any laws the rest of the year. That is pretty much the extent of the Purge movies. I have only seen the first one. I didn't love it. I thought with such a unique concept, it didn't do very much with it at all. It felt very uninspired and a lot. It's weird. It was so unoriginal despite this very unique concept. But somehow it's gotten now three sequels, or two sequels and a prequel, and I don't know how many Purge movies are there.
I don't know, but I'm sure there are fan bases out there.
Oh, there's definitely fan bases because these films are not critical darlings, but the thing is they are all made on such a small budget they can easily make a profit, and which is why we're now on film number 4, and I guess there's a TV show on the way. Which, I mean, how can you make so much? How much story can you tell out of this concept?
It beats me.
I don't know. But I don't think you and I have to worry about that because 2 days later we have our next Marvel movie.
Yes, we do. That being Ant-Man and the Wasp.
Tough act to follow.
Yeah.
I gotta say, the Ant-Man films...
Those who have seen Infinity War will absolutely get what we're saying.
Well, and I also just think the Ant-Man films have had such a tough break. Like, the first Ant-Man film was released after Avengers Age of Ultron. And now the Ant-Man and the Wasp is being released after Infinity War. Now, I think it's a much bigger leap from Infinity War to Ant-Man and the Wasp than Age of Ultron to Ant-Man.
Yes.
I mean, it's sort of hard to get excited for this film because I'm still, like, locked on Infinity War in my mind. But the original Ant-Man, I thought was a really good movie.
I liked it a lot. I really did.
And that's another film that had production troubles in the background. Edgar Wright famously attached to write and direct the film for, I think, since the original Iron Man came out, and then in 2014 was, I believe, fired, or he left due to creative differences, and then comedy director Peyton Reed came on, and I guess audiences and the studio had liked what he did, because he's returned to direct the sequel, and it's 82% on Rotten Tomatoes. So I think Ant-Man and the Wasp stands to, you know, be another success for the Marvel Studios franchise, even though, again, it's got to follow Infinity War.
I mean, what I'm gonna do, what I might do is just you'll have to go in and, you know, just spend those 2.5 hours not thinking about the tragic events that occurred in Infinity War, because correct me if I'm wrong, and I might have to brush up my Marvel knowledge, but doesn't Ant-Man take place before Infinity War, or?
They haven't exactly stated where Ant-Man and the Wasp falls in the timeline. I think, based on, you know, the hints from the marketing, I think Ant-Man and the Wasp sort of takes place either like adjacent to Infinity War or right before Infinity War. So like they could be doing their thing while everyone else in Infinity War is battling Thanos. I'm not sure. Obviously, they're not letting the narrative of Infinity War affect this film too much, which is fine. You know, again, the problem with the cinematic universe is everything connects, and so everything sort of, you know, dictates what comes before. So I think they're just sort of, you know, being a little more lax, because a lot happens in Infinity War.
Yeah, a lot.
So I think they just wanted to let the filmmakers, you know, have their way with Ant-Man and the Wasp and tell the story that they wanted to tell, which is good. And I look forward to it.
Oh, for sure.
And it's also the first female-led Marvel film, and I say led with quotation marks because it's Ant-Man and the Wasp, not the Wasp and Ant-Man. Do you think that Marvel's a little, you know, burned that, you know, DC beat them to the punch with Wonder Woman as far as, you know, an entirely female-led superhero film?
You could also say that DC probably beat them to the punch with Justice League, which could have been which they probably thought was their most anticipated crossover event.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, then when you think about it, Marvel really took their time to bring all of their superheroes together,
right,
for 3 crossover movies. It's been 10 years in the making.
Yeah.
Whereas with DC, I feel like they were just rushing to get Justice League out because they want to catch up with Marvel.
Yeah. No, that's definitely what it was. DC was playing catch up.
And like we don't know, like not everybody watches the Flash TV series. Not everyone's gonna know who Aquaman is yet, or Cyborg.
Yeah.
So just to throw those in Justice League might be a little bit of a shock to some who only know Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman.
But like, sort of like Wonder Woman had her introduction in Batman vs. Superman, the Wasp had her introduction in the previous Ant-Man film.
That is true.
Played by Evangeline Lilly. So we'll see. I think Ant-Man and the Wasp will be another hit for Marvel, and
for sure.
I also look forward to Captain Marvel next year, which will probably be just as good, if not, more successful than Wonder Woman for DC. And I love Wonder Woman.
Oh yeah, Wonder Woman is a very good movie. So moving on, we have coming out on the same night as Ant-Man, we've got Sorry to Bother You.
Sorry to Bother You. That is, that's probably going to be a much more limited release and definitely not going to hit the same box office numbers as Ant-Man and the Wasp. It's an independent comedy. It got a hugely positive reception at Sundance. What Sorry to Bother You is about, this African-American man is sort of like down on his luck. He's a telemarketer, and his life's just really not going anywhere. And then at one point he finds out he can, I gotta word this delicately, he can do a good white guy voice. Like he can sort of impersonate a white person on the phone. So, and I guess that leads to huge success for him in his life. So I think it's going to be a very interesting film.
That'll be interesting. Is that?
I mean, it's going to have huge political commentary. It's going to be like Get Out, but more funny. And this guy actually is from Get Out. I forget his name, but he is the guy who shouts the infamous title "Get Out" to the main character. So, and again, I don't want to spoil a Get Out for anybody, but I think, you know, knowing what his role was in Get Out, you can sort of see how he transformed into this character. Have you seen Get Out?
I have. I thought Get Out
So
was
he's
an
the
excellent
guy.
movie.
He's the guy with the hat, and then, you know, he takes the photo, and so then he's like going nuts, and it's like he's screaming "Get Out" and stuff. He's like the neighbor's like boyfriend type thing, and you know the whole story of Get Out.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's sort of like why I see how this could work for him.
Oh yeah, I'm seeing it too.
And also in that film is Tessa Thompson from Thor Ragnarok and Creed, who is becoming a rising star in her own right.
Who is she in Ragnarok?
She's Valkyrie.
Valkyrie. Okay.
So don't sleep on Sorry to Bother You. If you can't get into Ant-Man, go see Sorry to Bother You.
I'll probably see that after Ant-Man as well. Next up, we've got Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson in Skyscraper.
I am so excited for this movie.
That movie actually looks very, very exciting.
Listen, I'm going to call it right now. This is going to be The Rock's equivalent to Die Hard.
Yes.
Or, I mean, The Rock's equivalent to the Towering Inferno, if you want to get technical.
Yeah, move over, Bruce Willis.
But basically, it's a high concept like skyscraper, roll credits, and it's sort of like a society inside the skyscraper, and sort of, again, terrorists hacked a skyscraper, and so The Rock has to fight the terrorists, which is why it sort of sounds like Die Hard. But the trailers are showing like a good, harmless, you know, fun action movie, which is sort of what you go to the movies in the summer for, just an action movie.
Oh, yeah.
And, you know, I don't see it being a critical success. I think it'll, you know, do all right with critics, but I think the audiences will eat it up because The Rock is the biggest superstar right now in Hollywood.
I can see this movie being serviceable enough for that kind of reaction.
Do you think The Rock has coasted on a lot of good faith these past few years, deservingly so and yet undeservingly so. With like the Jumanji sequel is really great.
I still haven't seen that.
You should see it; it's really good. Baitwatch was Rampage was fun. It was mindless fun. So, The Rock is definitely, you know, I don't want to say he's like walking a thin line, but, you know.
And he's got tons of character in the animated world too. After Moana.
Yeah, he's got plenty of cred with, you know, Moana. So, I think, you know, this will probably be another hit for The Rock, not a miss.
Oh, for sure.
We'll see.
All right, next up we've got Sony Pictures Animation's Hotel Transylvania 3 Summer Vacation.
Something for the kids. Excuse me. I've never seen the Hotel Transylvania films.
I've only seen the first one, and I thought it was very good. It was directed by, I'm gonna butcher his last name, Genndy Tartakovsky.
Genndy Tartakovsky.
And he was the creator of two classic Cartoon Network shows,
Yes.
Dexter's Laboratory and Samurai Jack.
And Powerpuff Girls too, right?
That was actually Craig McCracken.
Oh, okay.
And it's kind of, this one might be a little bit of a letdown because he was originally going to work on his own film adaptation of the famous 1930s cartoon character Popeye the Sailor. There was finished animation for that. It was on YouTube. It looked amazing. It was definitely his style. Brought the character in light. I'm a huge Popeye fan, and love the old cartoons. But unfortunately, those plans got canceled right away to make way for a certain cell phone comedy with smiley faces, which was
he didn't direct that though, did he?
No, he
Okay.
didn't. They're like, no, we need another Hotel Transylvania
Who
sequel.
did? Do you know who
sequel.
directed the Emoji Movie?
I really don't know.
I don't think the Emoji Movie had a real director. I think the Business Roundtable at Sony's Picture Animation directed that movie. I sort of have always written these films off because they're Adam Sandler films. So, you know, we all know how Adam Sandler does his films, like the past
In the live action world.
yeah, the past 10 or 20 years. I always thought it was just the animated equivalent of an Adam Sandler comedy, so I didn't give it too much thought. But, you know, also like the Purge films, these films not favored by critics, but have made a ton of money. So this is why we're getting a third one. I think it's far enough from The Incredibles 2 that it can make a profit. They obviously have a lot of faith in it because the first two were released in the fall, and so they pushed this one to the summer. So might see some decent numbers for this movie.
We will. And I thought Sandler was fine as a voice actor in
Mm-hmm.
Hotel Transylvania compared to 8 Crazy Nights.
Mm-hmm. Let's not talk about any crazy night.
Yeah. So if we were to give Adam Sandler more voiceover work, I'm sure he'd be a little more serviceable because his Netflix movies haven't really been that
No.
up to par.
I've only seen, well, it wasn't a Netflix movie, it was an independent movie called The Cobbler, which I watched recently, which is
I watched that.
all right.
I just watched that back when I was still in college. I thought it was meh.
Yeah, it was very meh.
Yeah.
And then the week after that, we have Mamma Mia 2, Here We Go Again.
I have not seen the first one.
Okay.
I've
Neither
seen
have I.
I've seen the stage musical
Okay.
in New York City, and I thought that was fine. You know, I love ABBA. Their music's great.
That was good.
Um,
I never saw the play. My mother saw the play, so
this
back
was a
when
gift from my mother at the time.
back when I didn't have a license, you know, she drove me around, and so 90% of the time, what was on the radio in the car was the Mamma Mia soundtrack. And so then I got older, I'm like, hey, this band's singing the songs from Mamma Mia, and it's like, no, the musical took the songs from ABBA.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the original was the 7th highest grossing musical film of all time. There's never been a sequel to the play.
This should be interesting.
I'm not sure what this film is about. I watched the trailer. I guess Amanda Seyfried, Meryl Streep's daughter, is pregnant, and she's running the inn that her mother ran. But then it's also flashing back to how her mother met the 3 guys. I'm not sure what the plot of this movie is.
I think, from what I remember, that might be all you need to know.
I guess. I mean, the original play is about, you know, it's her wedding, and she wants to know who her biological father is. And so the 3 candidates come to the wedding, but she doesn't find out who is her father, right? She just sort of like, you know, reinforces her love with her mother and stuff.
I could be wrong, but from what I remember from the stage musical, she just accepts all 3 of them,
Oh,
like a Full House
like a
kind
family
of thing.
type thing. Okay, maybe I need to see the play or the original.
I might have to go and watch the first movie to see if I'm actually right.
Also, just for you Cher fans out there, this is Cher's first film role as Meryl Streep's mother. I don't know.
Isn't she a little older than Cher?
Yeah, I know. It doesn't make sense to me.
I'm sure they can do something with that. We'll see.
All right. The Equal, and you know, if you're not a fan of, you know, musicals, there's The Equalizer 2 out that same weekend. You and I, neither of us have seen the original Equalizer. Critics were iffy on that one, but it made enough money to be considered, I guess, a financial success. Again, this is Denzel Washington playing a former government assassin, sort of like becoming like a freelance, you know, equalizer for common, you know, citizens, based off a TV show, apparently. I don't know.
Oh, from what I read, I thought that this was going to be the start of a franchise that was going to lead to a series.
Oh, okay. With Denzel Washington in the TV show, or?
I'm not entirely sure.
Okay.
This was just me looking up notes.
Okay. From the same guy who directed the original, Antoine, I'm going to pronounce your name wrong, Fuqua. His work is rather hit and miss, but I think he's at his best when he works with Denzel. I mean, this is the team that brought us, you know, the iconic Training Day film. They did the Magnificent Seven remake, which was good, but not great.
I saw that one. I thought that was okay.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. Denzel still's got plenty of star pull, and again, this is another case of like the original did good outside of summer blockbuster season, so let's put the sequel into the summer and see how it goes. If I had to gamble on what film is going to take the #1 spot that weekend between Mamma Mia 2 and The Equalizer 2, I'd have to give it to Mamma Mia 2. Honestly, I think the musical does a bigger draw than Denzel shooting people for like the 17th film in a row.
I'll say, because we don't get that many musicals too often.
No, we don't.
But we've been lucky with La La Land that came out a couple years ago,
Yes,
and
La La Land and
The Greatest Showman.
didn't see it. Les Miserables.
Oh yes, yes, Les
Yeah.
Mis.
So that's that.
Next up, we've got. Oh, did you have any more to say about The Equalizer?
Nope, that's all I gotta say on The Equalizer.
Okay, and next up, we've got Mission Impossible Fallout, the 6th film in the franchise, but like Fast and Furious, they seem to get better as they go.
Definitely, I think Brad Bird with Ghost Protocol, which was the 4th film in the franchise, sort of gave the franchise a breath of new life, and I think they've been solid hitters for the studio ever since. I have only seen Ghost Protocol is the only Mission Impossible film I've seen since the beginning of this franchise. I thought it was a great action film. I mean, the Mission Impossible movies, they're not thought-provoking,
They're not groundbreaking.
No, they're not groundbreaking. They're not. I mean, probably as far as like action and stunts and risking your life, Tom Cruise. I think they're groundbreaking in that sense. But they're, again, just another popcorn action film for you to enjoy during the summer. Don't take it too seriously.
Yeah, nothing wrong with that every once in a while. I'm glad it's got the following it has.
Yeah.
I've personally never been a huge fan of Mission Impossible, but you can't like everything.
No, exactly. And for you fans of Justice League out there, Henry Cavill's in this movie, and that mustache he's wearing, that's the mustache that ruined the Justice League reshoots. So keep your eyes on that mustache in that film. And then we're finally into August. On August 3rd is the next in the line of many Disney live action. I wouldn't really call this one a remake.
I'd say a follow-up.
Follow-up. Yeah, that's a good one.
Christopher Robin.
Christopher Robin. It's sort of like the Hook equivalent of Winnie the Pooh, and also in some strange way Disney's equivalent of Seth MacFarlane's Ted.
The Pooh Bear in that trailer kind of looks a little bit like Ted.
Little bit. I think they tried to go for more realistic designs, making them look more like stuffed animals. But basically, Christopher Robin is now an old man. He's sort of forgotten, his time with Winnie the Pooh and friends. He's sort of
And his family too.
Yes, he's become swamped in work. He's forgotten his family, and then during like a moment of crisis, Winnie the Pooh and friends come back at the right time and sort of help him remember what it's like to be a kid and what's important in life and stuff. So I think everyone seeing this is going to have to bring tissues, because I think the nostalgia is going to hit your tear ducts in a Toy Story 3 kind of level. I mean, I think, like me, you grew up with Winnie the Pooh.
Oh, I love Winnie the Pooh. I always have.
Definitely a big cornerstone of my childhood.
The original 3 featurettes were played
Yes.
over and over again in my house when I was a little kid.
Yeah. So yeah, I think this is going to be a major hit at the box office. I think critics will really enjoy it. I think, families will, it will resonate with families. I think, your Kleenex stock is going to, go up. And just for the folks keeping track, there is another Disney follow-up coming out this year.
Mary Poppins
Mary
Returns?
Poppins Returns. This is all part of a current trend where Disney is, revamping, in some cases, remaking their animated classics into live-action films. In the case of Christopher Robin and Mary Poppins, sort of, sequelizing or revamping in a way.
I've been a little on and off with Disney bringing their animated characters into live action. Christopher Robin and Mary Poppins, I'm not so bitter towards. I'm actually excited for Christopher Robin.
Christopher Robin seems like, it's honoring the original source material just fine. Mary Poppins Returns, the teaser trailer looks really nice. Emily Blunt seems like a good choice. I thought P.L. Travers said no more Mary Poppins films, but...
What I read was, after the original Mary Poppins came out, P.L. Travers tried to demand Walt Disney to create a sequel. Said, "Okay, I gave you my characters. Meet my demands," or something. Those weren't her. I'm sure those weren't her exact words, but it's always a mixed story. I'm not sure which one is entirely true.
Yeah, I mean, Saving Mr. Banks probably puts it in a more positive light for those who have seen that movie. I'd highly recommend.
Excellent movie. Tom Hanks as Walt Disney.
But it definitely sugarcoats the resolution of Travis and Disney's relationship.
And Trevor's reaction to the film after its premiere.
So I think these two films will, I think they'll do quite well because they're not just remaking what's come before. As far as remakes, we've had a Cinderella remake, which I did not see, but apparently people really liked.
I saw it. I thought it was okay.
Yeah. The Jungle Book remake, which I really enjoyed.
I liked that one too.
I would say it's as far as pacing and story wise, it might be better than the animated original. There was a Pete's Dragon remake. I never saw the original Pete's Dragon.
I still haven't. I kind of have a soft spot for the original Pete's Dragon.
And then the biggest one that we've had so far is the Beauty and the Beast remake, which is definitely, it's got its critics. I enjoyed it as a huge fan of the original. The original is my favorite film of all time. I thought it was a good, tribute and homage to the original. But as far as its own standalone film, it's not that great.
It was, and I'm sure this is what everybody was expecting. What bothered me was that one. I felt like it was the same movie line for line in
pretty
a way.
much. Yeah.
I didn't love it as much as everybody else did. I'm glad it's gotten the fans that it's received.
Yeah.
It wasn't really my cup of tea like the original, which I've always adored.
Yeah. I love parts of the remake, but it made changes that it shouldn't have. Some changes it shouldn't have made, and some changes worked, but not in like a impactful way. They're like, oh my God, that you fixed the original, but the original didn't need any fixing. So
we'll see what happens with Dumbo too.
Yeah. Oh yeah, and the Dumbo trailer came out this
came out
week,
yesterday, I think.
which looks nice. I was very concerned because
It's
droopy, dark Tim Burton was remaking Dumbo, but it looks good, so we'll wait and see.
We'll see what happens. Moving on, we've got on August 3rd, the same opening night as Christopher Robin, we have Susanna Fogel's The Spy Who Dumped Me.
Yes, Susanna Fogel, only her second directing effort. She directed a film called Life Partners with Gillian Jacobs and Adam Brody in September 2016. Had a modest, critical reception, found new life on Netflix. It hasn't been a great year for female-led comedies. As far as just what we've got in the past few months, we've had I Feel Pretty from Amy Schumer, which I think was generally disliked by everyone across the globe.
I won't talk about my opinion on Amy Schumer.
Well, just the concept of that film, it felt like it was completely out of time. Like basically, it's Amy Schumer, and she gets hit on the head, and so now she sees herself as this the standard of a beautiful woman that's the standard society's beautiful woman, and so she flaunts about she's like a runway model and stuff. So it's just awkward. It just doesn't seem like a very feel good film. It just seems mean.
Yeah.
To have a main character in a film go through that, it's almost like Shallow Hal in a way. But I don't know, that's just me. So that happened. There was a remake of Overboard, which probably should not have happened because Overboard's story is definitely not for the Overboard story is definitely dated. And then Melissa McCarthy's Life of the Party, which sort of came and went, which, I have my opinion on Melissa McCarthy films, but save that for later.
Depends on what you put her in, really. I don't dislike Melissa McCarthy.
But as far as The Spy Who Dumped Me, you have Mila Kunis and Kate McKinnon, two actors who do great with comedy. It could be a very inspired pairing. August is a very quiet month as far as the summer blockbuster season. Not a lot comes out. I think when Marvel dropped Guardians of the Galaxy in August, 4 years ago, people realized, what the sort of potential August can do for your movie. So I think The Spy Who Dumped Me could be, a good success for this second-time director and Mila Kunis and Kate McKinnon.
I'll say. And up next, we've got on Also on August 3rd, we have Peter Berg's Mile 22 with Mark Wahlberg.
And this is like Peter Berg's like 5th film with Mark Wahlberg after Lone Survivor and Patriots Day and Deepwater Horizon. He's also done Battleship and Hancock. He's an action movie director. That's what it is. And the plot of this movie, when I said Mile 22, I thought it was like a movie about the Boston Marathon. I was like, again? But I guess it's like Mark Wahlberg and Ronda Rousey are part of a special ops team, sort of taking this, asset to Mile 22 of this geographical, I don't know. The whole trailer was just, action movie shots. So don't expect too much from that one.
We'll see what happens. I tend to like Mark Wahlberg in his more serious roles.
Yeah, I do too. I like him a lot better out of the Transformers franchise.
Yes, as do I. Up next, we've got The Meg.
The Meg is the next in line of movies trying to replicate the success of Jaws, the original summer blockbuster movie. It is a shark attack movie, but this time the shark is much, much bigger. So they're going to have to throw like 17 oxygen tanks in this one to blow it up. Directed by John Turtlab. For those who don't know who John Turtlab is, he's directed a lot of live-action films for Disney, like Cool Runnings, The Kid, Natural Treasure, and Sorcerer's Apprentice. Not a lot of heavy hitters in that line of films.
Cool Runnings is a guilty pleasure of mine.
This is just like a dying genre where like the shark or like the sea monster attacks the beach, and a couple of scientists or like average individuals have to rise up and take out the monster. Like,
how many Jaws sequels did we have for people to realize that this was dying even back then?
There was Jaws 2, there was Jaws 3D, and then there was Jaws the Revenge, I believe. There were 4 Jaws movies in total, and then there was also, we've had Deep Blue Sea, we've had Piranha 3D.
Sharknado.
How many Sharknadoes have there been?
Yeah.
So again, sort of like, Jurassic Park with the dinosaur movies, I think the sea monster movie genre is dying, but again, this is August. It can make a good profit. It's got Jason Statham and Rainn Wilson in it, 2 actors who haven't really done much lately, so it might be nice to see them on screen again, and could be a very interesting pairing, I think. I mean, you got the action guy, and then you got Dwight from The Office. They could play off each other well.
Oh, yeah. Next up, we have Spike Lee's Black Klansman.
Yep, directed by, critically acclaimed Spike Lee. This film, again, another festival heavy hitter, won the Grand Prix Award at the Cannes Film Festival. Already at 95% on Rotten Tomatoes. This is is based on a true story of an African-American police officer who sought out to infiltrate and destroy the Ku Klux Klan. This, again, a film that could play big in awards season, but is strangely being released in August. We've talked about how the Academy sort of has a short-term memory problem, and if your film isn't released between November and January, chances are it's not going to get nominated. So I think this film will be I think it already is a critical success. Financially, I don't think so. And it's sort of like Detroit last August. I think that it's just going to go quietly, unnoticed throughout award season.
It'll have its cult following.
Oh, it definitely will. Spike Lee, that's a name people know very well. And then we have one more movie to talk about.
We've got, from the mind of Brian Henson, The Happy Time Murders.
The Happy Time Murders. Let me just start by saying...
We'll keep it family friendly.
Yeah, no, we're going to keep it family friendly. This film started development over 10 years ago. It's been in, development purgatory ever since. The Jim Henson Company is making this movie. And, as far as distributing studios, it's been, passed around until finally, I forget what studio is finally releasing this film. But this film finally got made after 10 years, after many, various actors were attached to it, and like Jamie Foxx and Katherine Heigl, and then they picked Melissa McCarthy. Which, I think Melissa McCarthy is a great performer. I think the roles she picks aren't exactly the right thing for her. Like, she always seems to fall into, the the blundering, loudmouth oaf character, and I think she does so much better when she's not in that role. Like, I think so many people have seen Bridesmaids and thought, oh, she'd be good at that. But I think movies like Spy have proven she can do so much more. And this, I mean, we don't have much to go on.
I feel like, so for an actress that, someone may not be too big on, like Melissa McCarthy, if you put them in with the Muppets or these Henson puppets, I feel like because she's playing off with fictional characters, the movie's mostly about the fictional characters. That's what we're going to pay the most attention to. I feel like she could play off that a little better than, let's say, Spy.
Well, I think Spy was one of her better movies. But I definitely agree that I think the Muppets can bring out the best in people, sort of like, Ricky Gervais in Muppets Most Wanted.
Oh, yeah.
But let's talk about that first trailer as best we can.
Okay.
I was so excited for this movie to finally get made. And then I saw that trailer, and I was just so disappointed.
The vibe I'm getting is that it's like Sausage Party. They made it, they wanted to make it completely obvious that this is an animated movie strictly for adults, rated R, Sausage Party. I feel like Happy Time Murders is gonna be like that. Only, it's a movie with puppets. It's usually kids and their families who go to see them. We need to make it obvious that it's for adults and more of I would understand if it was, okay, puppetry is an art form that can appeal to anyone, much like animation. But again, I'm sounding like a broken record.
Yeah. No, it's Sausage Party meets Who Framed Roger Rabbit, starring Muppets and Melissa McCarthy. The trailer, is advertising a very lowbrow film, which sort of is a letdown for me when you remember that Brian Henson, the son of the great Jim Henson, is directing this. He directed the Muppet Christmas Carol
And Muppet Treasure Island.
Yeah, so, is this sort of like rebellion against Dad? I don't know.
Beats me.
But the first trailer, again, very disappointing. Do not take your kids to see this movie.
Please.
Please don't.
Please don't.
And if you don't believe us, go watch that first trailer.
Yeah.
And speaking of taking your kids to see this movie, you want to talk about that lawsuit?
No Sesame, all street.
Yes. So one of the basic tagline of the film is all Sesame, no street. Play on Sesame Street and the family-friendly puppets and the Sesame Workshop tried to sue Happy Time Murders, and it didn't go well for them, did it?
It really didn't.
I think the lawsuit was dismissed, wasn't it?
I believe so. I think Henson won the case.
Yeah, so Sesame Workshop could have stopped this film, but it didn't.
Nope.
And that carries us through the entire summer blockbuster season.
All right. Thank you guys for watching this year's BNews Summer Movie Season Spotlight. With BNews Entertainment reporter Chris Flaherty, I'm John Viaes. Hope you all have a great night. See you at the movies.
Bye.